We also have Selfridges department store on Oxford Street, Fortnum and Mason on the street called Piccadilly, the same street we started our tour on. But the most famous of all the department stores would surely be Harrods. And again, it's an expensive area to live, as Knightsbridge is a town, so many museums and galleries in London are free to visit. And there are three free museums. Here on the left-hand side, Harvey Nichols is one of the many famous department stores in London that popped up during that Victorian era to supply that demand of everyone. The original Harrods department store opened in 1824 over on the other side of town in the area of Southwark. But Charles Henry Harrod decided to move here in 1849 to cash in on the fact that the world's first World Fair was taking place up the street in Hyde Park. The world's first World Fair, the great exhibition of 8 in front of us, and over to the right a little bit there. There's over diagonally in front of us to the right, there comes this fantastic archway pulling into view now. It's one of many victory arches that are found throughout Europe commemorating great battles. This one is called Wellington Arch. Some people call it Constitution Arch, and the statue on top is known as Peace in her Quadriga, depicting the Angel of Peace descending on the chariot of war, marking the end of Napoleon's campaign. You can find a statue of Wellington on top of his horse Copenhagen on the right hand side by the trees. That's on the site where Copenhagen the horse is buried. Now we are going to come back this way and explore the Michelin-starred restaurants. This next street on the left-hand side, passing now, this is Green Street. That's where the Beatles once lived together. In fact, the only time they shared a flat together was there on Green Street. As when they lived there, they weren't too far from Savile Row, which is the famous street of tailors in Mayfair. But more famously, or maybe less famously, but Savile Row is where the old Apple Studios used to be. And the building is still there here. And this is also where Peter Sellers passed away, the famous star of Dr. Strangelove and the old Pink Panther films, and a famous comedian in Britain. Is the art owned by the monarchy on display in the Queen's Gallery for your pleasure. That's all here at Buckingham Palace. We'll show you the exact direction down to the palace very shortly. 50-odd years ago, all about the headmaster's daughter, Alice Liddell. Former pupils of the school include A.A. Milne, author of Winnie the Pooh, and the famous old lovey actor, Laurence Olivier. Westminster Abbey is known as Edward the Confessor's Church. He was an ancient king that reigned in around the 1040s, just before William the Conqueror. He was a very popular king. They made him a saint because he was thought of to have godlike healing powers. He was so popular that his succeeding Saxon kings wanted a bit of that fame by building a tomb, an abbey around his tomb as almost a shrine to him. But there has been a place of worship here since the 800s in some form or another. Back then this area was known as Thornley to the top. Now next door to the London Eye there's a big building coming up on the left known as County Hall, which is a home to many family-friendly attractions like the London Dungeon, the London Aquarium, Shrek's Adventure, and much, much more. Bowling alleys, arcades and food and drink, all found in the building on the left. The area on the left here is known as the South Bank of the River Thames, and the South Bank has been a hub of entertainment since medieval times, and it's still that way these days, all the way along the South Seas. And very similar in there to the Titanic, as they had the same interior designer. So if you ever wonder what the Titanic was like, pop in there to the left, and you'll get a good feel for it, without the seasickness, of course. Now we're making our way to the City of London now, the old Roman capital Londinium. So from here on out, look out for a dragon. Whenever we pass a dragon on this evening, legend of Sweeney Todd, the demon barber. Apparently he murdered his customers, sent their bodies next door to Mrs. Lovett, and she would make them into pies and sell them. On the first floor, back then you could lean out your bedroom window and shake hands with your neighbour over the road on streets like these. That's when you weren't emptying your toilet bowl or privy out of the windows onto the streets. So not only too many people in a small space, but also lots of bad sanitation and of course rats as well. William Wallace, Braveheart, aka Mel Gibson, was one of those heads. He's grown since then as well. And down to the left here used to be the port. Once upon a time ships were pulling in here and offloading of tour guides. All of it there as well, just hanging around in Southwark. The young Charles Dickens grew up here. As he was 12 years old and his parents were sent to prison for debt, he had to go get a job in a factory. But in his formative youth he would have walked his rubbish. Also round to the right, Shakespeare lived in Southwark. That's where he opened up his grove near manufacture in 1599 and put its place on there for the public. Just behind the buildings on the right-hand side is Suffolk Cathedral. There's no area. You might see a circular building here on the left, a modern building. We call it the Pizza Building, but more often known as City Hall, the offices for the Mayor of London. Also just down to the left-hand side on the river, we have the HMS Belfast, a battleship from World War II, shots at Normandy Beach on D-Day. That's now a floating museum that you can come and explore. So this is the bit of the bridge that opens on, folks, so we'll just tip over the gap of the road in a moment. Now that area took the name, and circus doesn't refer to jugglers or clowns, I'm afraid. It's a Latin word meaning round. It's the roundabout at the top of the street. There used to be a whole roundabout, now it's only half a roundabout. But Piccadilly Circus is more famous, I'd say, for its advertising. It's the street on the right-hand side of the advertising screens. Head up there for lots of theatres per square foot, including the Harry Potter plays in that direction as well. So we're now back on the street known as Piccadilly. We're going to make our way back to Green Park Station, where